What's going on, everyone? So welcome to my latest video. This is part of a series where I focus on a specific composer and give you guys some honorable mentions and then my top 10 favorite scores from said composer. Now you clicked on the video, so you know at this time I'm giving you guys my top 10 favorite Hans Zimmer film scores. Now this was a very difficult list to do because he is a composer that's been working for a long time, and I like many of his scores. So one of the main things that I decided to do with this video, just to make it much more manageable for myself, is that if he did work on a film series, I decided to only go with one film from that series just to make it, again, easier. Another thing I decided to do was have it where there's only 5 honorable mentions and then go from 10 to 1. But again, I have to preface this. It does not mean that some of the scores that you might, deem as your favorite or are the best, it doesn't mean I don't like those scores. It just means that it probably wasn't able to make the list, or it was very close to the list, but it doesn't mean I didn't like the score. Like, for example, the score for Widows, I quite like, same with Rango, but those scores unfortunately didn't make this list. So there's others as well. But that's the nice thing about Hans Zimmer, is that I guarantee you that everybody's list in the comment section is going to be different, and that's what's great about film as an art form, is that it is subjective, not objective, and such is the case with my list. This is a subjective list, and again, I'm looking forward to seeing what your top 10 favorite scores from Hans Zimmer are down below. But guys, enough exposition. Let's get started. So kicking things off, we have honorable mentions, 5 of them. The first honorable mention is Days of Thunder. Days of Thunder is from Tony Scott, and the movie itself, is it good? It's okay. The score, though, absolutely thrilling, especially during the race scenes. It's really, really good. If you haven't seen the movie, that's fine. But at the very least, do yourself a favor and check out the score. Hans Zimmer did a really good job with the score. Some of the other scores from the 80s, 90s that he did, they sound similar to this, and some might argue in many ways some of those scores inspired this one, but I think that this is one of the better ones that he did in the 80s, 90s. And so I have it as an honorable mention. Next honorable mention, we have King Arthur. This is a film that came out in 2004 from Anton Fuqua. The movie itself, I have to say, I enjoyed. I know that it is flawed, and I know that a lot of people don't seem to like it, but there's no denying the epic scope of the score. It sounds really good. I'll listen to this score every now and then on its own, and I think it's just really good. It's epic in scope, and at the same time, very personal when need be. I love the themes, how, certain characters have different themes. Just a really impactful score. Again, the film itself, I can understand why some people might not like it, but I really don't see people denying the fact that the score is really something special, and that's why I have it as an honorable mention. Next honorable mention we have, and this is going to be a hot take because I know that this is a lot of people's top 5 favorite Hans Zimmer scores, and we have Inception. I like Inception. The film itself is good, and I think the score is really, really good. But I will say this, the score is very similar to some of the other scores. In particular, there's one film, and for those of you that are eagle-eye viewers, you'll probably say, oh, this is spoiling his number one. But my number one film is a film that came out years and years and years before, and it heavily influenced Hans Zimmer's score for Inception. And that's why I think that although the score is really good, it does dampen it a little bit because I see, how that film was very influential towards this film. But the score itself is really good. It's very bombastic and at the same time very personal when need be. And it especially works during the action scenes. So I like the score quite a bit, but at the same time, I do think that it's not as original as some people might think because, again, Hans Zimmer, one of the things about him, although I like him a lot, he does take and borrow a lot from his previous work, and this is one of those films. But, again, I like the score quite a bit, so I have it as an honorable mention. Next one we have, and this is going to be a surprise, we have The Lone Ranger. I'm a very big defender of The Lone Ranger. I think it is a very entertaining film, whilst at the same time one that has a lot of rewatchability value and just really good practical effects. And the score by Hans Zimmer, I really like. The score is emulating Ennio Morricone's score from Once Upon a Time in the West, and it's ironic because the first time that I saw this film, I had just seen Once Upon a Time in the West the day before. I'll never forget that, and so it was just funny that when I saw that film and then I watched The Lone Ranger, I'm like, oh wow, this score sounds very similar. And it's not to take away from it. If anything, I think that it's a nice homage, but at the same time, it does stand on its own. And I also think that the William Tell Overture, Hans Zimmer's rendition, it works quite well. But again, it's a score that I think it fits the tone, the quirky nature of it all, and just it's a very interesting score, especially for a Western, and that's why I have it as an honorable mention. And the last honorable mention, this one was so close to making my top 10, and that is Angels and Demons. So I know what you're thinking. A lot of people look at the Da Vinci Code and they look at that score and they say that that score is better than Angels and Demons. I disagree. I think the score for the Da Vinci Code is good. But I think Angels and Demons, it's just such a really, really breath of fresh air for Hans Zimmer. I think it's something that feels very opening in terms of the scope. It's a chase film, essentially, and it's also across different continents. So you need to have a score that matches that. And I think Hans Zimmer does in terms of the scope. And also at the same time, it's personal, but also just epic. I've listened to the score countless times. The movie itself, I think I've seen 2 or 3 times. It's okay. It's a fine movie, but the score itself is just so good. I highly urge you to listen to it, especially if you're, late to work. Put this score on. I guarantee you'll get to work early. But yeah, Angels and Demons, that was my last honorable mention. And now we get into the top 10, guys. So kicking things off with my top 10, we have Dune Part 2. So Hans Zimmer in the 2020s so far, I've kind of felt as if he's been phoning it in, except for Dune and now Dune Part 2. And Dune Part 2, I think, is a better score than Dune Part 1, which is kind of ironic because Dune Part 1 won Best Original Score, whilst Dune Part 2 wasn't even nominated because it used some of the themes from the first one. And that's what I want to say about my list. My list, personally, you'll notice that the sequels are the ones that usually get nominated in terms of my list. And the reason being is because they're taking the really good themes from its predecessors whilst at the same time building on them. And I think Dune Part 2 is a great example of that. I mean, for crying out loud, the main romantic theme song that's played in this film, it's amazing, whilst at the same time really keeping those main beats of the original score from the first one. I think it's a nice balancing act, and I think that Hans Zimmer was up to the task, and I'm very curious to see what Part 3 is going to bring us in terms of his score. But yeah, this is a score that I really like. I do think that it's a shame it didn't get nominated for Best Original Score, but at the same time, I think you of all people watching this video can attest, it's a really, really good score, and that's why I have it as my number 10. Next up, my number 9, piggybacking off of my number 10, my number 9, we have Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice. So, as I mentioned, some people might say, oh, Man of Steel, why is it Man of Steel on this? And the reason being is that I like Man of Steel. I think the score is really, really good. But what I liked about Batman v Superman is that it takes those main theme beats of the original in terms of the score and everything, and then it builds on it. And I think that in building on it, it actually makes it, more well-rounded and more epic in scope, but also somber when need be. So I just think that at the end of the day, I think the score for Batman v Superman is better than Man of Steel. But again, the score for Man of Steel, I do like. But as I mentioned with Dune Part 2, this is a list where the sequels are the ones that I think are better in the grand scheme of things in terms of the scores. Scores, keep in mind, that's what we're talking about. But yeah, if you haven't listened to Batman v Superman, the score, I highly recommend that you do so. You might feel mixed about the movie or might not like it. That's fine. I like the movie, but to each in their own. But the score, there's no denying, it's pretty good, and that's why I have it as my number 9. Next up, my number 8, we have Sherlock Holmes. So the score for Sherlock Holmes, A Game of Shadows, I like quite a bit, but the score for Sherlock Holmes, the one that came out in 2009, I've listened to this score countless times on its own, and I think that not only is it great on its own, but I think that when you're actually watching the film, the imagery matches the score seamlessly, and I think that it's such a unique take in terms of how they did the score for this film, and I think that, for that, I'm glad that Hans Zimmer got recognized, and he got a Best Original Score nomination for this film, deservingly so. So I quite like this film. I love Hans Zimmer's score for this film, so if you've been sleeping on this film and you're a Hans Zimmer fan, I highly recommend that you check this film out at the very least for Hans Zimmer's score. So yeah, I liked Sherlock Holmes quite a bit, and that's why it's my number 8. Next up, my number 7, continuing the trend of the sequels making this list. My number 7, we have Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End. So Pirates of the Caribbean, Curse of Black Pearl, fun fact, it was not scored by Hans Zimmer. But ironically enough, there is another film on this list where that score heavily influenced the score for Pirates of the Caribbean, Curse of the Black Pearl. To the point where some people will watch Curse of the Black Pearl, and then when they watch Gladiator, they think that Gladiator took from, Curse of the Black Pearl, and it's not. It's the other way around. But we'll get to that entry. What I'll say about this is that Dead Man's Chest was so close to making this list because that was the second entry, and that was the entry that Hans Zimmer did score, and he also, of course, scored this one. But I think that the more the more blending of genres in terms of the score was something that I personally liked even more. Like, there is a track that sounds like it's taken from like a Western film. There's an epic romantic track towards the end of the film, and also towards the end of the score, that is just, it's sweeping, it's grand, it's amazing. And I think that whilst Dead Man's Chest, I think the score is really, really good, I don't think it has those moments that really, put the cherry on top in terms of elevating this score just a little bit more than the second one. But again, I like Dead Man's Chest score, but this one I just think is a little bit, better. But either way, I'll be curious to see which one you have on your top 10, if you have either. But yeah, Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End, that's why I have it as my number 7. Next up, my number 6, we have Blade Runner 2049. So Blade Runner 2049, it's one of my favorite films of all time, but it's not just because of the cinematography or the production design or the visual effects or the performances or the story. A lot of it also has to do with Hans Zimmer's score. And Hans Zimmer, of course, worked with another composer, Benjamin Wallach, I think his name is. And I think that they did a really good job working together. But I think the blending of their different styles especially was something that worked well with the imagery on screen. And I think that it paid homage to the original Blade Runner score, whilst at the same time making it its own. And I think that was something that I really appreciated. I also love how there's a lot of bass in the score. I think that was something that really made it feel fresh. So if you haven't listened to the score, I highly recommend you do so. I think that it's a really nice blending of old and new. And that's why I have it as my number 6. All right, guys, now we get to the nitty gritty. Top 5. So kicking things off with my number 5, we have The Last Samurai. So this is a film that when it came out, it got some Oscar attention in regards to, I think it was production design. I know it was supporting actor, which was well-earned nomination. And it also did decent at the box office. But surprisingly, the score for this film did not get nominated. And I think that is a shame because the score is amazing. I heard some people say that the score for King Arthur in this are slightly similar, but I would kind of disagree. I think that this is a much better score, whilst at the same time, again, I really like the score for King Arthur, but I think that this is more melancholy based. It feels more depressive, but at the same time romantic. It's an interesting blend of feelings that this score really emulated for me, and I think that that's one of the special things about Hans Zimmer is his range of garnering, that feelings from you as a person, as a viewer. And I think that this film really encapsulates that in a way that is immersive. So even if you haven't seen the film, I highly urge you to at least check out the score. The score works on its own, but especially the imagery works so well with that in the film. So I highly recommend the film, but again, please, at the very least, if you're a fan of Hans Zimmer, do yourself a favor, check out the score. You won't regret it. And yeah, that's why I have it as my number 5. Next up, my number 4, I had to put this on this list. My number 4, we have Interstellar. What a score. Holy cow, what a score. Just the usage of organs in this film is so good. And I've been talking a lot about how Hans Zimmer works really well with garnering different feelings, different emotions from, audience members in regards to the scores. And I think that this is especially a great example of that, where the score can garner almost tears from you as audience members, but at the same time, it's so epic in scope. And at the same time, it's very tense when need be. The cornfield chase is excellent. That's an amazing track. It's one that it's only like a minute and a half long, but you wish that it was like 15 minutes long. The docking scene, that track is amazing. The Cower track, there's just so many great tracks. And the ironic part is this wasn't my favorite score of 2014 that went to the Grand Budapest Hotel, but this was like probably my second or third choice in regards to that year. I think it's a great score, and I think that Hans Zimmer he put so much effort into the score, and it shows. So even if you're not necessarily a fan of Christopher Nolan, which, I know that there are people out there that aren't, I highly urge you at least to check out the score for this film because it is really, really good, and, it's dramatic when need be. So I love the score for Interstellar, and that's why I have it as my number 4. Next up, my number 3, speaking of Nolan, I had to choose between one of the 3 scores from this trilogy, and I ended up going with my number 3, The Dark Knight. So the score for Batman Begins, excellent. Really, really good score. And I think the score for The Dark Knight Rises is underappreciated. But the score for The Dark Knight, I just think that it's amazing. It's amazing what he was able to pull off in regards to the score for this. And I got to give James Newton Howard, some also credit because he worked with Hans Zimmer. But I think that there's just so many different tracks that really stand out. The track for the Joker. I think that the way he's able to build themes for characters. That's something I have been touching on a little bit throughout these entries that I've been talking about. But this in particular, like there's a different track for Harvey Dent. There's one for Rachel. There's one for Joker. And then also during the more tense moments, the cross-cut editing scene that's leading up to the party. That whole scene. There's just so many different cross-cut editing scenes that are amazingly done. And I think especially during the action scenes, it's incredible what he's able to pull off. And once again, going with the whole sequel thing, Batman Begins established certain themes of the characters, and this score does utilize them, but at the same time, it builds on them. And I think that that's why, at the end of the day, it is the best score of the trilogy, and it's one of my favorite scores from Hans Zimmer, and that's why I have it as my number 3. Next up, my number 2, I mentioned this earlier, so, it might be a little bit repetitive, but my number 2, we have Gladiator. So I mentioned earlier about how Gladiator came out in 2000. Pirates of the Caribbean, the first one, came out in 2003. But a lot of people, because of the different ratings, like Gladiator is rated R, and Pirates of the Caribbean, the first one, is rated PG-13. A lot of people grew up watching the first Pirates of the Caribbean, and so they look at the score, specifically Jack Sparrow's theme, and they say to themselves, "Oh my goodness, that theme is amazing and everything." And then when they watch Gladiator, they say, "Oh my goodness, Pirates of the Caribbean heavily inspired Gladiator. Gladiator stole the theme," and it's like, no, that's not the case at all. Gladiator heavily influenced the score for the first Pirates of the Caribbean. In fact, Gladiator was the number 1 score in the world when it came out. Like, that's how influential this score was. And does it hold up? Absolutely. It's an incredible score. I think the fact of the matter is it really helps elevate the score, especially during the more dramatic scenes. I think the scenes where Hans Zimmer really gets dramatic and, Russell Crowe's performance matched with Ridley Scott's directing, I think during those scenes, especially towards the end, they really get you feeling emotional, and it's awesome. It's a great score. So if you haven't seen the film, again, do yourself a favor, watch this film. It's a really good film, especially as a revenge film. But the score, perfection. So that's why I have it as my number 2. And to be honest with you, it was pretty close to getting my number 1 slot. Like, I was going back and forth between my number 1 and 2, but at the end of the day, my number 1 has my favorite track possibly ever, and my number 1 is The Thin Red Line. The Thin Red Line is kind of controversial in that the score, for the longest time, I wasn't sure if it was Hans Zimmer or Gavin Greenway that did the score. But then when I saw the film, I think for the first time on Blu-ray, I saw that it said, music by Hans Zimmer. So that's when it was the final nail on the coffin. It's like, okay, Hans Zimmer did the score. Got it. I can give him credit. But it's one of those things where it's a gray area, because Terrence Malick, he is known for having a composer, but then at the same time, usually only using a certain amount of, time for his, and then he might use other music from, other works, or he might decide to go with another composer. That's his style. That's what he does, and it's one of the reasons why he doesn't work with the same composer throughout all of his work. It's just how he is. But Hans Zimmer, going back to him with his score for this film, Hans Zimmer's score is on another level. I think that it's amazing how calm and soothing it is early on, and then as we, slowly get dreamt into the war, we see the visceral nature of it, and Hans Zimmer's score matches that. But then we get to the Journey to the Line track, and this track, it's amazing. It's a track that gets me emotional every time. Like, I get goosebumps listening to the track. And going back to Inception, it's very clear that the track Journey to the Line is something that you can streamline to all of his work. It's a track that heavily inspired 12 Years a Slave. It heavily inspired the music for that film. It also influenced the music for Widows a little bit. It also influenced the music for Inception. And he's been using this track in different ways throughout his work in the 21st century. So it's one of the reasons why, again, I know that a lot of people love Inception. A lot of people say it's his best his best score, and I can respect that. But for me, The Thin Red Line, it's the one that started it all in regards to, him utilizing that track. And I think that it's as a whole, it's a score that's very well versatile, and I think it's just a very effective score too. The film might not be for everyone, but for me, it's probably my favorite war film, and it's one of my favorite scores of all time. And yeah, that's why I have The Thin Red Line as my number 1. But hey guys, that is my top 10 favorite Hans Zimmer film scores. Let me know yours in the comment section down below. I'm very curious to see yours because, as I said, he is someone that's been working for 40 plus years. So everyone's is going to be different. So I'm looking forward to seeing what yours is in the comment section down below. And if you haven't done so already, be sure to follow me on Patreon, Letterboxd, subscription, notification bell, and I will catch you guys later.